yeah, the weak players have been weeded out first through the Amazon effect. And that continues. But then, yeah, through COVID as well, as more and more customers became solidified in their patterns to shop online and have it delivered. But there are plenty of strong retailers out there that not only are not closing, but they're also backfilling these boxes.
All right, in this episode of Resolute Reveal, we're going to be cutting through the headlines to uncover the real story behind retail's current state. If you're watching the news, reports of 15,000 store closures this year have been really circulating, but we want to talk about the reality of what we're seeing in retail, some of our takeaways and experiences, and also talk about some strategies and things we're doing to help property owners and investors of strip centers and retail properties to overcome some of the challenges in the space right now when it comes to that. I'm here with David Simmons and Martin Turner. Again, we'll be talking about store closures, the so-called retail apocalypse, and the real state of the retail market today, and strategies for landlords for filling vacancies and what we're doing, especially in today's market. Back here on our third episode, how you guys been doing?
Very well, thank you.
Doing good.
Great. So what do you think? I'm going to roll down some numbers when it comes to what we're seeing in the market today. So I'm sure you've been reading the headlines. Projected closures, approximately 15,000 retail store closures are expected this year. That's double from 2024, marking the highest number of closures since the pandemic. Some key drivers for that, they're saying economic pressures such as inflation, interest rates, consumer preferences toward online shopping, e-commerce, and value-driven purchases. And then we've seen a ton of retail bankruptcies and liquidations over the past year, among them Party City, Big Lots recently, Kohl's made an announcement just recently, and Walgreens as well. So you want to start by sharing your take on these?
For me, this just seems like a continuation of the long-term trend. You know, this headline in some form or fashion has been around for the last 15 years. And, you know, it's more of the same on that front. Obviously, that's a good statistic. You know, we're double prior years and the largest since the pandemic. I'd imagine a lot of that has to do with the fact that the pandemic, you know, and the boom after the pandemic kept a lot of people afloat for many years. And we're just starting to see the other side of that. But still a continuation of the longer term trend. And I'd imagine we haven't seen all of it.
So when this really became more and more of the headline, I mean, if I'm going to spitball it, 2017, 2018, the Amazon effect, and it's real, and it has been real, obviously, and the call to order has been for retailers need to adjust, not only really focus in on their internet presence and their online shopping experience, but also their stores, as far as making them experiential. As online shopping has become more and more prevalent, the customers aren't going to tolerate disorganization, out of stock stuff, poor customer service. And that's just the baseline. But then you have to put it into high gear and make it experiential. These businesses that are going out, they've been going out for a long time. It's not just interest rates have hit, inflation has ticked up, and that's been their, their death knell. In fact, it has been their death knell, but it's been leading. It's all about operations, especially some of these companies' seemingly refusal to adjust to omni-channeling, as far as, selling their goods and wares on the net and in store. And so as a result, the weak players have been weeded out first through the Amazon effect. And that continues. But then, through COVID as well, as more and more customers became solidified in their patterns to shop online and have it delivered. But there are plenty of strong retailers out there that not only are not closing, but they're also backfilling these boxes. It's natural, it's creative destruction of capitalism.
Yeah, I think where you have to look at it as a real problem is when these vacancies are coming up and they're not getting backfilled. But that is not at all the case here, right? In fact, I'm sure we'll jump into this, but, a lot of landlords are probably happy and have, tenants coming in right behind these tenants. So I certainly wouldn't say that this is catastrophic and by any means in terms of the number of vacancies that we're seeing right now. I think it's part of the natural cycle.
And to Martin's point, yes, the landlords are happy, with the number of tenants ready to backfill these spaces, but also a lot of these leases on these big boxes are pretty antiquated.
Right.
And so the rents are really low. The landlord had to have them as loss leaders to get their big box center, out of the ground. So the rents are a lot lower than market will bear. They have arduous and draconian restrictions as far as what kind of businesses you can put in the shopping center, even outside of their direct offering. They restricted a lot of uses. So to get out of those anchor clauses, to get those rents, sometimes quadrupled. Of course, there's the flip side. There are stories of shopping centers that are ill positioned, ill managed, that it will hurt and possibly put them in foreclosure. But it's a very, very rare story out there right now.
Case in point, we just had a call yesterday with a client, 15,000 square foot pending vacancy. Prior tenant is paying $10 a foot, and we are pro formaing the space at $20 a foot. So literally double what they have been collecting on that space. So sure, they'll put a little TI into it and have 6 to 12 months between collecting rent, but they're going to be in a much better space and probably, on a cap rate basis, close to double the value of that space.
So since the Amazon effect, a lot probably has been overcame. I remember during that time, people were really freaking out that retail stores are going to close. And it did have an effect. Probably the biggest hit were hard good sellers, probably apparel. What else was out there? Electronics. I mean, during that time, you saw a lot of these smaller stores. I mean, as compared to the tenant lineup that you will see in just say a typical suburban strip center, a lot of them have disappeared due to e-commerce. But as the way we've seen retail evolve, there's someone always filling that gap, and we're probably going to see that today. Do you remember like some of the stories or deals that you'd done in backfilling back when a lot of those smaller hard goods or soft goods sellers went out?
When you say back when, what kind of time period are we talking about?
I'm probably like 18, 19, before the pandemic. So I think we were struggling a lot with, even before the pandemic, the Amazon effect was the conversation, right? When it came to retail and brick and mortar space, and the step in of a lot of what we call now experiential retailers, right? Bars and restaurants really filled a lot of that void.
Absolutely. Just like we've been talking about, as far as creative destruction. And, Warren Buffett once said that, when the tide goes out, you see who's been swimming naked. And so the really weak players were the first ones to get hit by the Amazon effect. And a lot of those times they were in the Class C shopping centers, the Class C submarkets. So those were a little bit more of a challenge. Fundamentally, they were definitely the more challenged areas. Those were the ones to get exposed earlier on, and you had, the 3 Fs, food, fun, fitness. But you also had, turned into apartment complexes, mixed use, hospitals, schools. And so sometimes even, office headquarters, before COVID. And so in the beginning, the uses that were backfilling it were not as traditional. Now that certainly occurs today. We just got done backfilling a Bed Bath & Beyond with a regional fitness chain in the Northeast. So that's still going on, but to a lesser extent. I mean, today you have more prime locations coming available as these chains continue to struggle. And you have the TJ Maxx family with Home Goods, Marshalls, HomeSense. You've got Dick's, you've got IKEA still doing stores, Painted Tree, Ollie's in the bargain basement category, buying a lot of those big lots leases as they continue to grow. So we're now seeing a more tit for tat more often. And then you'll see the fitnesses and the schools as well.
The pandemic really accelerated. I mean, I think we all saw the Amazon effect or e-commerce effect was started, when you said like in 17, when it really became a household word or use. And then, when you look at analysts and reports, the e-commerce platforms and the way that we're consuming has significantly accelerated. They say probably about 10 to 15 years due to the pandemic. The The stores that probably didn't have time to react fast enough, like the Joann's, like the Big Lots and stores like that. So who else are we seeing as replacement tenants, or, like you just mentioned, Ollie's, getting into Big Lot spaces or buying a lot of their leases. I know a lot of the 99-cent stores were bought from a lot of different users as well. For landlords, what do you think they could expect with, these boxes that they're kind of left with?
The tenants, like pickleball tenants, right? They're doing deals left, right, and center, and taking large spaces from anywhere from 15,000 on up. There are pickleball tenants taking mall spaces, 100,000 square foot plus in some markets. So that's a huge one right now.
Yeah, I would say along the lines of, really depends on your shopping center. You take Sunset Valley Market Fair in Austin off of 290 and Brody. They've had a lot of big boxes go out, but they've backfilled it with Home Goods, they've backfilled it with HomeSense, they've backfilled it with Daiso, Painted Tree. That's 4 junior anchor spaces that hit this center. And you would think that Kimco was, sounding the alarm. No, not at all, because there's such little supply, in Austin. There's such little supply in Texas. The vacancy rates across the state is like from anywhere from 3 to 4.5%. Rents have been growing over the past 3 years, 5% per. Overall vacancy has been trending downward since 2020. And we mentioned this on the last podcast that this is true all over the country practically. Almost every market. Now, I'll introduce my retailer client who's expanding nationally, and I'll introduce him to the local market broker. And, it's just funny. Every time they're starting off with, well, we're less than 3% vacant. We're less than, we're between 1% and 2% vacant, and it's everywhere. Try to find a space in the Charleston area in South Carolina. I dare you. It's just Nashville. Crazy tight. Just crazy tight. And like I said, it holds true across the market. So, yes, there's a human story behind all of this. People's jobs, people's money, are tied into these organizations. From a pure retail real estate standpoint, this is great, because since the Amazon effect really came into highlight in 17, 18, and especially since COVID, developers have not even come close to delivering the amount of space the market has been demanding.
What do you think
hanging back?
Right. So what was it, do you think it's been the Amazon effect that had this conservative development of retail space since then? Or was it something that's been doing prior to that?
No, it's eye-opening, that when, come a certain year, whatever that was, 17, 18, you just saw, like, I remember Dallas one year, and had a very, very, very healthy market. Can't remember the last time it didn't. And, it delivered 25% of the space it normally did, as a historic average. And most of those 25%ers were just, neighborhood anchored centers, little neighborhood centers, which is not to be, poo-poo, but, those big box centers just, went away. Austin's, for the first time in a long time, is starting to see, these big box centers coming out of the ground again, but mainly in Kyle, which is a suburb, in between San Marcos and Austin. For the first time, you're seeing, big box, retailers filling up these site plans, and it makes you realize, wow, I haven't seen this in a while.
And then also just the cost of construction, shortage of labor, all of that since the pandemic. The pandemic itself put everyone's plans on hold. And then the labor constraints since then have been huge factors in stopping a lot of the ordinary development from happening during that time.
Yeah, I think construction costs have, they've probably gone up 30, 40, maybe 50%, $400, $500 per square foot, I think, for most.
Another anecdotal example is, how undersupplied we are. It's a COVID effect, how undersupplied we are with daycares, for parents to find daycare space for their kids. It's in pretty bad shape. Well, I have a lot of drugstores going out. because they over expanded, over the past, decade and a half, maybe sooner or maybe longer back. And, so we run with some, regional daycares, and we're looking at one Rite Aid after another. We're looking at CVS's, we're looking at Walgreens. It's not the easiest retrofit, but it is, relatively speaking, easy.
Comparative to other retail uses, because that's one that usually really hurts if you're an owner of a drugstore and the drugstore goes out. What
do you do with it?
Tough backfill for that building. Great real estate, but you almost have to scrape it and start over, and or take a much lower rent. And
well, the funny thing is, at least in
those guys can pay. Yeah.
Excuse me, Martin. At least in the Northeast, these boxes are going from anywhere from $28 to $40 a square foot, base rent. It's just credible. And there's competition. Like, you're competing with multiple groups, pretty much in every deal. We lost a deal recently to a medical group, came in the ninth hour, and took the box. So, it's not like you're settling at, $12, $15 a square foot. My group is a fairly thrifty group, cost conscious. And, we're putting out offers for 35 now. Can't go up to 40, but we're going out to 35 plus expenses.
That's amazing. We see this new category called medtail, right? A lot of medical users filling inline space now. They're taking single small buildings, they're taking pad sites. We'll probably see a lot more of that. I'm getting more calls about that. We have the start of the silver wave generation, and I'm probably on the tail end of that. I'm going to need some extra help in my later years, but it's definitely a real thing, right?
Know that term, silver wave generation. It's the first time I've heard it.
Is that Gen X?
Educate me.
Well, the boomers have already been in that, and it's the tail end of them really needing a lot of medical help. And then Gen X getting into that space now. So yeah, it's definitely. I was actually talking to somebody, a different broker or a banker that I'm working with, and there's a high shortage of senior community space as well. The seniors that they have nothing to do, but they're, if there's like a community space where they have, a lot of activities for them and they can get shuttled there, they're really getting overflowed right now as well, because there's just not things to do, and for them to stay active and healthy. And people's lives, lifespan is much longer. People are much healthier in a lot of different ways. But in San Antonio, for when it comes to medtail, because there's the need for affordable healthcare and easy access. I mean, there's a ton of users that, especially serving the Hispanic demographic and all across town, and that's one of the major users that we're seeing for filling a lot of spaces here. I've seen a lot of Walgreens and stores being recently by some jewelry stores, which was interesting. I'll send you a couple pictures on that, which I don't know I can't remember who the user was, but I think they filled up 4 or 5 stores here in San Antonio at those locations.
Jared's?
Not Jared's. No, it's a different name.
Sort of a sidebar. One of these senior care facilities, very well-heeled group nationally. They came in. I don't know if you guys remember the Iron Cactus in the North by Northwest, there in the Arboretum area, along Research or along 360 as you're approaching Mopac. So they came in, bought these 2 tracts of land that the restaurant sat on for well over $100 a square foot, and went vertical. Beautiful product. That had sat vacant, for a year and a half, close to 2 years, because they couldn't find labor. And that's a heck of a carry. To buy the land at the prices they did, and then to go vertical and everything else. So I guess the moral of the story there could be, to tie into everything, is just, yes, there are a lot of headwinds. There's no doubt about it. But the groups that have their act together, not only financially, but operationally, marketing, omni-channeling,
yeah,
they're adjusting. They're evolving.
And that's the thing. Target's the great example of that. They were able to really pivot with omni-channel. The fault of the other big boxes like we've seen recently, Joann's and Big Lots and who not, they weren't they weren't able to pivot and address the need for being online to serve their consumers better. A lot of the analysts think that's where the big trouble for these guys are.
I remember when go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, but it just also just being victims of the long-term trend. I mean, yes, operationally speaking, you are right. And there are probably things that all these retailers could have done to extend their life. But, I think they were in the path of what eventually was going to happen anyways. And yeah, I mean, you guys remember that ICSC, what was it, like 2017 or 20, I can't remember the year, maybe even further back than that, but retail is fucked was like the magazine
slogan.
right as you walked in, like they were handing them out to everybody as you go in, and it was like the title of the magazine was Retail is Fucked. And I'll never forget it because it was kind of humorous because, in the years after that, retail boomed and had remarkable success. And I think we're always sitting on that headline. And I think we are right now, but
I think people
don't be
like
surprised when we're sitting at the same vacancy rate in a couple of years.
People like that story. They love that headline. I'll be honest, when I put up small news reports of retail closures, I probably get the most amount of interaction from people on comments and views. The jewelry store that I was talking about is called 4 Nines, which is interesting. I think they're out of Arizona. Yeah.
David, sorry, I cut you off going into that.
Oh, that's okay. I already forgot. So 4 Nines, I mean, are these neighborhood shopping centers, neighborhood areas, or is it more close to regional?
Right in front of the wall, like up the street from where I live, the Walmart Supercenter. I mean, not the Walmart, the H-E-B Center on Boulevardy. They took over they took over a Chase Bank, and in another location, they took over a drugstore as well.
Because, jewelry usually goes in, regional shopping center areas. You'll see them go outside of Costco because they're the number one diamond purveyor in the world. True story. But yeah, I mean, I picture Walgreens locations. I picture neighborhoody locations, and I've never seen jewelry do that.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see.
Yeah,
I would imagine they are more regionally located,
Yeah, I'm just looking at their website. It looks like they have a large 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, they're from Arizona, and they've just opened stores here in San Antonio. So yeah, we'll see what they're all about. But they look like nice. They're nice stores, well located too. It's not, Let's address the retail apocalypse and, stores going dark, but that's not what we're seeing in the commercial real estate market when it comes to retail space. People don't think that when stores go dark that there's opportunity there. It's like they think of loss, but as David mentioned, there's a lot of upside because of a lot of these leases were locked in at really low rates that the owners can really take advantage of that today. Looking at a car wreck as you're driving by on the highway, I mean, people love the sensationalism of downfalls of businesses. But if you're a landlord, it's just all about what type of center you have. I mean, having the right marketing team in place to go after the tenants that can be had. If you have that, class B minus center and you get a big box vacancy come online, I mean, too much of your time shouldn't be, without any other junior anchors, too much time shouldn't be spent on the TJ Maxx companies. So for example, on Dick's, sporting goods. That's when you're looking for the alternative uses. But man, IKEA just recently enough announced a third store in South Austin in San Marcos. And it's going into San Mar Plaza. Traditionally, San Mar Plaza has been, class B minus at best. Always a nice looking center. Well positioned, good access, all that stuff. But it just had those sort of lower tier tenants, like a Hastings, like a Harbor Freight, stuff like that. And all of a sudden, IKEA's going in there. And I think simply because if they want to be in South Austin in that general area, existing square footage, that's where the opportunity was. So sometimes you can even be surprised. You have a historically class B minus shopping center, and you're backfilling it with a IKEA, instead of a Crunch Fitness. Nothing wrong with a Crunch Fitness. It's just, you'd rather have an IKEA. The things I continue to see continue to surprise me as far as just, how much demand is out there, how little supply is out there, and how far, these retailers and these users are willing to stretch to continue their expansion, in an atmosphere of very, very, very little supply.
So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, David, isn't in that case, isn't it simply that there was probably only one space in that market that was even possible for
Yes.
an IKEA to fit into?
Yeah, exactly.
With them, they got to be,
Well, it's a smaller model,
Okay.
but still, it's a big box. It's a big box.
I was going to mention that it's a smaller format IKEA, and that's also a trend with these larger operators as well, right? They're looking for smaller stores.
Do you know what square footage their smaller format is?
Let me
Approximately.
look it up.
Yeah, the one they did, and there seems to be several different kinds, like their urban one, because they went into the domain, and I know that was a fraction of the size. This one, I mean, I just read the article yesterday, and this one didn't say how big the store was, except it was smaller. But yeah, no, that's
one story.
Yes.
Well, there is, so in San Antonio too, they're opening up, I don't know if it's the same one as San Marcos, but I'll try to look it up. But they have something called a planning studio where they could go in and just shop like virtually for their space in particular, and someone will help them design it, and then they're able to get that stuff delivered to them. I think those are around like 8,000 square feet.
I think that's the one at the domain.
It's tiny compared to what a traditional IKEA is.
Yeah, that's the one that's at the domain. I would love some time to figure out what they're paying there. Because domain rents are very, very high, depending on the phase of the project, between 50 and $100 a square foot. And IKEA doesn't have the most expensive furniture. So curious how those economics work.
So the IKEA in San Marcos showcase local living solutions tailored to local preferences, and they're covering approximately 35,000 square feet.
That's a lot smaller.
Tiny compared to what the traditional is which is
a lot smaller.
Very cool. We should do a live tour of that someday, three of us.
Yeah.
What other users are we seeing that's kind of been changing since, I mean, David, you've been in this few more years than I have. I mean, the evolution of retail, right? And where things are going.
Well, this isn't new. This is the same, but
yeah,
food is still very prominent, and, huge demand for in-cap space, and restaurants are, restaurant deals are happening every day. That's not new, but just a continuation.
Fitness, from the big boxes like discounters like Crunch and Planet Fitness, but also Equinox, which is on the other end of the spectrum. 24-hour Fitness is doing new deals for the first time since I can remember, 20 years maybe. And then you've got the smaller players. And so, and all kinds of specialties, whether it's, boxing, whether it's Pilates, whether it's, cycling, whatever it is, and the smaller users as well. And so, again, 3 Fs, food, fun, fitness. Fun, I mean, trampoline deals, indoor playhouses, bowling, I mean, pickleball, like Martin said, those are really in high demand.
Golf. There's a lot of indoor golf users I'm seeing now too.
Yeah, I mean, I represent the Back 9, indoor golf simulator, 2,500 to 3,500 square feet. So not filling up all the vacancy at once, but, they're exploding. I mean, they've got over 30 stores now, and they've got over 100 franchisees signed up. And so, that concept has really taken off, for example. And self-care, I can't keep up with, how many, you go to this for a spa, you go to this for immersion, you go into this for, it's just, there's so many different ones that try to differentiate themselves in the offering they're giving. So, food, fun, fitness, self-care, those are by far the dominant players that are filling up space.
Let's talk about malls. I mean, I've seen a couple of cases throughout the country that are kind of making a comeback, but, the malls that I know here in San Antonio, not very exciting. A lot more vacancy. The big box anchor stores are really outdated from the experience that you go in. And a lot of times, even though people do shop there, 80% of the time the inventory is not there as well, which is kind of funny.
One, the malls today have to have scale.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away with a smaller size mall. And it's just got to be located in the right area. We're talking retail here. So before yesteryear, you saw a lot of malls go well off the beaten path for cost reasons. went there. It was more of a destination. That's not the case today. So yeah, if you're in that B minus and lower category, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a very hard time with the evolving landscape. These class B plus and up malls, they're doing just fine. Their vacancies are very low. Simon, smartest man in the room, these type of products, they've gone in class A areas, but that mall still needed help. And, they turned it into mixed use. They've got that kind of piggy bank to be able to do that, where these more individual owners do not. And so again, mixed use, make it experiential, have the scale, be located in an area that you would want any retail project to be located in as far as the fundamentals go. And they're doing just fine. And so, co-working space was big, but then it's not now. But there's plenty of other uses, as far as residences, multifamily, and the like. And really, these projects are transformed, where they were better than they were in their glory days. So, it's interesting when these retailers shut down these stores, in these malls and places like that, their online sales for that area actually go down, completely counterintuitive. These retail stores are, like billboards, there's a presence. And then it gets into, they close down, then it's out of sight, out of mind. I would have totally thought, you shut down the brick and mortar, well, online sales are going to pick up. Not the case.
Isn't that also because of in-store pickup and curbside and whatnot? Wouldn't that also have an influence on it? I just bought a espresso machine yesterday for my wife and I's anniversary, and I ended up buying from Best Buy because I could go and pick it up. So I went online, made the purchase, went down and picked it up curbside. And I didn't go to any of the other folks because I was going to have to wait a couple days. And of course, I was buying my anniversary gift at the last minute. So
it's a good story.
Happy anniversary today.
All right. Happy anniversary. Yeah. Nice.
16.
Nice.
Good for you.
Sweet 16.
Plus or minus 1.
We all have our bad years.
That was a conversation I had on social media recently too, was that the preference of being able to get, even if it's a pickup, ordering online and pickup, like people want to get it immediately. And sometimes if they go to stores, majority of the times, no one has inventory in the store, like for something that you want to just get that day, which has been a real big complaint when it comes to consumers. So, you have your Best Buys and big stores, taking all that footprint, but 70-80% of the inventory is not available, or the exact piece that you're looking for. But of course, they could ship it to the store and it's going to take a couple days, which is disappointing a lot of people.
Yes, sir.
Stepping back to malls, I love a mall. It's what I grew up with. It's nostalgic, but what's a better way to spend a day in a fully climatized area with all these different choices for food, fun, and fitness, like you mentioned, think about Las Vegas. You don't even have to step outside and you're just enjoying this giant world of entertainment and good things around you. I'd love to see the malls make a comeback.
For the soccer moms and the NASCAR dads, to have a place where you can bring your kids, but they have to have those fun play areas, like an indoor playground. Ice skating rinks are big, all the things we already know. But yeah, that's why you got to have that scale. You got to have those offerings, so that people of all demographics show up. And, I don't know if it's, it's just anecdotal, but it seemed like mall traffic dropped off with the millennials, but has resurged, with Gen Z. I should probably read about that somewhere. So I'm seeing, certainly not the mall expert, but I'm seeing a pretty good diversity, when I am there.
My kids love going there. They go to the mall on the weekends with their friends. Thought the same thing. I'm like, I thought this went away, but you go there and you see, 13 to 17-year-olds all over the place and they're hanging out there. So there definitely has been a shift back towards that.
Trends are definitely cyclical, aren't they?
What's old is new.
Yeah.
Like mullets.
Like what?
Mullets.
Yes.
They've made a comeback, haven't they?
Yes.
They should stay gone.
Did you guys ever have a mullet when you were growing up? I'm sure you did. No?
I've never had hair, man.
I did have a tail. That's like where literally it's a tail growing out the back.
Yeah.
I was very, very popular in South Philly when I was growing up. So
That's very cool.
yeah, I had a spiked haircut up top and then a tail in the back.
Man, how did I not know about this? I've worked with David for 14 years and I've never once heard about this because I would have definitely remembered that.
You got to share a picture. You must have one.
Yes.
I'll ask my mom. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was a rocker when I grew up. I was in the 80s rock. So I had like this long, I'll bring some pictures. I had really long hair and I used to wear leather jackets. I never had a t-shirt with sleeves. They were, as soon as I got one, it was completely cut off. And good old days.
Good old days.
We need little icons on our
Maybe
screens right now.
Yeah.
Those photos.
Well, so store closures, it's not equating to what the market is, what's really happening in the market, right? Retail is always evolving, not failing. Landlords have opportunities right now with situations of store closures. Some reasons for that is, again, we have really low inventory on market, but because retail overall is doing so well that we have a high demand. What else are we seeing when it comes to retail closures, or maybe where retail is going, and of course when it comes to shopping center, strip center investment?
Our neighborhood shopping centers are doing really well and leasing up. I mean, pre-leasing for neighborhood shopping centers just seems like it used to take us a lot longer to get, pre-leasing underway, and they're just all doing well. And it speaks back to the same thing we've been talking about, undersupply in the market, a lot of new home communities, and very large supply of, retailers, mostly franchise-driven retailers that are going into these neighborhood strips, and just seems like they're doing very well right now.
Well, like I said, when you have these gargantuan markets like Dallas and Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston, and they're batting at 4.4% vacancy, I mean, it's just, it boggles. Huge inventories, and still not that much out there.
How do you guys feel about the rental rates right now? It does reflect,
unsustainable. That we feel like there's going to be a fallout. When you're paying, $40-$45 a square foot plus, $20 triple nets, building from shell, in these little neighborhood areas, mom and pop concepts, even regionals, franchise concepts, but a lot of these franchisees are first timers. A lot of them aren't going to make it, we feel like. And we feel like there's going to be a cycle where that space is going to come back on the market. Why is it that high? Well, we talked about construction, land, just the costs are so high. And that's the only way that developers can make their pro formas work is by having the rents that high. And because of the lack of space, we have all these users that are willing to pay it. It's going to be interesting to see over the next, specifically, couple of years, what shakes out there.
How are you advising landlords that are adamant of like trying to take advantage of the current rental market situation?
Do it
when we don't see like that being sustainable in the future. Do you think it's going to be a problem down the line, short term or long term, 5-7 year window?
Boy, who knows, 5-7 years, what the market's like. But how you do it? I mean, these tenants are finishing out your spaces for you from, cold dark shell to white box and better. They're putting the restaurants in there, adding huge value. You could be a merchant developer and sell it on a pretty good cap rate. Let the next owner, deal with it, or you can even, we're just refi it, and pull a bunch of money out, and everything else. Now you say, long term hold. What's that going to look like 5 to 7 years from now? Who knows? But short term, the tenants are lined up to backfill those spaces, as they become available.
And it's everything we've been talking about, right? I mean, some of these folks are not going to make it, but there's going to be evolution in retail, stuff that we can't think about right now, trends that we can't see. And they're going to come in and backfill those spaces, probably at even higher rents. And we're going to say that's unsustainable. So no, but I do feel in certain areas, yes, it is unsustainable. It has to adjust, or who knows, maybe we have another round of inflation and and then it just becomes normal. And people look back on those rates and say, boy, I wish I had those 2025 rates.
Right.
Like we're saying about 2015 when we were saying it was unsustainable. So
Right.
Good point.
Well, retailers probably do have some challenges up ahead, right, with possible tariffs. I mean, it still hasn't really been clear if this is going to be a long-term thing, because especially retailers that are importing a lot of goods to be sold. And then, obviously the interest rates are still there, and consumer behavior, all those challenges still moving forward. But cyclically or historically, we've always seen retail to somehow overcome. And that's going to do it for today's episode. But before we go, don't forget to subscribe to the Resolute Reveal podcast to stay informed on market trends, success stories, and actionable insights in commercial real estate. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and find us on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. If you're ready to partner with us to maximize value on your property, find the perfect space for your business, or have any questions, don't hesitate to find us at www.resolutre.com. That's RESOLUTRE.com. This was the Resolute Reveal podcast, where real insights lead to real results.